Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 45 of Authors, Creators, and Visionaries. I'm Elizabeth Lyons. I was thrilled. I feel like I start every podcast saying, I am so excited or I am so thrilled that I got to talk with so-and-so. But it's true every single time. Mike Young is one of my favorite people. He and I have known each other now for about 6 years. We have traveled this entrepreneurial journey together. It's crazy to me how much our lives have paralleled one another. And in all of that time, we never did a podcast. He has a podcast. I have a podcast. We didn't appear on each other's podcasts. And as he said, when we first started recording this one, I'm really glad we waited, because I think that what we can both bring to it now is different and, dare I say, I won't say better, I'll just say different than it would have been a few years ago. So we got together and we talked about our greatest lessons learned from 2020. And most of them are business lessons, frankly, but they're things that from his side, I haven't heard yet. And they're pretty profound. And I really am looking forward to you hearing them and absorbing them and hearing back from you what resonated. I also just want to put out there, if you don't know, I have a new free masterclass available at publishaprofitablebook.com/33-day masterclass, all one word. This class is designed to, in just 49 minutes, get you out of your way, remove the roadblocks that keep holding you back from either starting or finishing your book, and get you actually writing or rewriting if you have stalled, so that your book can get finished, get out there, and start making an impact. So again, you can find that free masterclass at publishaprofitablebook.com/33-day masterclass. I now give you my interview with the fantastic Mike Young. My friend, I'm so glad to have you back. And you said, because I talked to you about this last week, and I said, I want to title this podcast 3 + 3 = 2020 lessons. So we were each going to talk about 3 lessons, personal, professional, whatever, that we had gleaned over the last year. And you said, I want to start off with a story. And of course, I loved that. So you have the floor, and please tell your story.
Well, I would say that our stories tend to run long because looking back, it's I can't even believe it's been almost 6 years since we met.
That's crazy to me.
And
Because yesterday felt like a decade. So it's nuts to me that it's been that long. But
well, the time horizon's definitely gotten messed up in 2020. We're all having to adjust a little bit.
No kidding.
Well, I think it's cool. First of all, thanks for having me on. It's literally, we haven't done a podcast together, and we've known each other for 5 or 6 years now. And
I know, isn't that crazy?
I'm super grateful that we waited, because I think the lessons that we've both learned through this journey, you spoke at my event, and we've both had our day 214 meltdown where it seems like everything you touch turns to crap, and and the money's negative in your bank account, and you're like, what am I doing through this journey? And there's so many lessons that come from that. But I think what I wanted to share was, when we did have the event, which was, I think it was March or April of 19.
Mm-hmm. It was almost 2 years ago. So yeah.
That's insane too. But I'm just like, I was in a position at the event where I finally felt like I was there, wherever there is, I felt like I'd arrived, this mythical place I was always trying to get to as an entrepreneur of, my business is flourishing and everything's easy. And I'm, on the beach and I'm just hanging out with friends. And I actually, right before that, and I haven't really shared this publicly, but it was the first time that I'd made over 6 figures in like less than 20 days.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, I was like, I finally cracked the code.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have the event, and the event is crazy in itself because it kind of started like it's like, Alexander Had a Very Bad Day, if you've ever seen that movie. It's like this,
A
it's
no
this
good, very bad, terrible. Yeah.
exactly. It's like it's this snowball, and it kind of, when I was going down to the event, I was super pumped because I was going to get a share over a decade's worth of learning with
And to be
people.
clear, it was your event.
Yeah, it was my event, and
Yeah.
the first thing that happened is we missed the flight.
Right.
And so the event immediately cost me an extra $1,000, and we booked the last two flights on the seat to get down there
I
just
remember
to
that.
make it to my own event. We got lucky, to be honest, really lucky, because there was literally two seats on one plane in the whole airport that could have got us there on time. And the event was great, and I I immediately after the event went back to the coaching program, which I had just had the success of selling so wonderfully. Well, about 6 months later, things had completely unraveled with a bit like it's almost like, um, there were more obstacles and challenges that I didn't foresee coming with a very expensive coaching program. The market had begun to shift. The dynamics had changed with my clients and with myself over a 6 month period of time. And I found myself in a year-long coaching program where we were 6 months in and things were not working. Like things had begun to unravel, and you could almost kind of feel it. You could feel like the relationships were starting to get awkward. And I hadn't built enough systems, and I didn't know the next steps in the journey. And next thing I knew, I'm in December, and I have one of those moments that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have, where you're sitting on the couch wondering, how the hell did I get here? How did I
Yeah.
get from being to where I've strived so hard to arrive to feeling like I was back at square one? And I'm lucky because I've built some very, very good relationships and friendships over the years. I have, behind the scenes, what I consider my inner circle, or I call it my chessboard. But I have
Mm.
friends, and you're on the chessboard, Liz. That's a good thing. So, but I have
Thank you so
friends
much. Pleased
in
to be
different.
here.
Yeah, you're the pawn. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, no,
I'm the
but
queen. Let's get clear.
but I have friends that I have very deep relationships with. Some of them I've never met in person still, and many of them I have. But people that you can reach out to when things aren't working and get
Yes.
support and advice. And so I reached out to several people during that time and said, I'm stuck here, and I can't seem to get out of my own head. And next thing I know, we had completely recrafted some ways that my program would work much better. And
Hmm.
so I had tremendous clarity coming into January of 2020. And I was super excited because it was just like I'd figured out what the adjustments I needed to make and the mistakes I needed to make. I'd learned some very hard lessons.
Right.
Well, the new way, well, and then there was like the new way that I was going to structure things. A team member no longer made sense to be on the team because the new structure meant that I didn't need this extra weight and this extra burden. And so I had to make, and I'm very empathetic. So I had to make some moves. I had to make choices. And when you're letting someone go off the team, that's emotionally hard on an empathetic person.
Right.
And, but what it uncovered all the flaws in my system and my processes. And I'd almost stepped away from my team too much. So I actually didn't see all the little things that were failing in the business because I'd taken my fingers too far off the pulse of the business.
Right.
And so then it exposed, like I thought I had one problem and it exposed 1,000. And then next thing I know, I'd figured out so many different things. And then it was February. And then all of a sudden I couldn't log into Facebook, which isn't that big a deal
I
because
remember
I
that.
was like, okay, it's no big deal. Facebook, whatever, it's a social
Yeah.
media network. But when you have most of your audience and have built a lot of the business on social media, it is a big
Right.
deal.
Absolutely.
Well, 45 days later, I
Yep.
find out I'd gotten hacked by a South African. Facebook's not very much help in restoring your account. I literally had to start over from scratch. Um, on that platform. I had to start over from scratch. So I had to set up a new profile, new ads account, got all that sorted, felt like I was ready for ads, and coronavirus hit.
Right.
And then next thing I know, my kids are at home when I used to go to the office, and we had this routine. And this is the story. The story is, even when you think that you've maybe accomplished what you're going after, there's going to be obstacles that continue to come at you no matter what. There's always going to things are always going to change and always evolve. Well, and it gets crazier, and I'll go through this very quick so I don't burn out an hour of the podcast talking about different things. But it's then my lead graphic designer got coronavirus, which knocked
Right.
her on her butt for about 10 days, and it took her about 30 days to kind of feel normal again. Um, a volcano went off next to my executive assistant who's in the Philippines. And then my website developer had a typhoon that created a flood in his city, and he got locked in his parents' hometown for 45 days because India had locked down the coronavirus thing,
Yes.
And my designer during that time, she spent 24 days inside her apartment with her husband and her kid because they were forced quarantine in Serbia. And
Right.
so she's texting me on day 3, fearful for her life. And on day 24, she's almost lost her mind because
Right.
it's not great to be quarantined for 24 days in a apartment.
Sure.
And, so it was just chaos. That's all I can say. And each step of the way, you have to figure out these lessons, and you have to overcome adversity, and it builds your strength in your character. But at some point, like we were talking about before the podcast, you're like, how many lessons do I need to learn? How much strength and character do I actually need?
Right.
It kind of feels like the universe or God or whatever you believe in, uh, it was getting strategic in testing me to make sure I
Mhm.
had the resolve to make it through that mess.
Well, and I'm so appreciative of you've always had transparency, at least with me. And I'm so appreciative of your transparency publicly, which I think you've always done a really good job of as well, frankly, because as you know, my passion for years has been, okay, what really goes on? So we
Mm,
see people who we admire and we emulate and we strive to be in where they are. And we take where we are and we look at where they are and we think, oh my God, that seems like light years. But once I get there, I'm not going to have any problems. Everything is
mm,
going to work like clockwork. Once I have a staff of 1,000, or once I have 8 different podcasts or 20 books, whatever the case is, everything is just going to work like clockwork. And I love it. I don't know if it's maybe I'm masochistic, but I love it when successful people can come forward and say, oh no, that venture completely bombed. Because it's bombing, something's bombing whether or not it's admitted.
mm.
So just say it and say, and this is how I got through, or this is how I kept going, or I did keep going. As the life of an entrepreneur is simply a roller coaster.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing that I had to get over, because I'm also a very conscientious person, is when things don't go the way that I plan them to go, I'll beat myself up. I'll
Mm-hmm.
have that inner dialogue that we all have, but I will go to town on myself. It's my fault. You're an idiot. Those are things that you have to break over time. I actually
Yeah.
I actually feel like that was one of the lessons I had to learn this year was you really, what you say to yourself matters. The words that you use and the language you're using in between your ears, in the dialogue that you're having with yourself that nobody else can hear, really really matters. And I was able to kind of flip that script and realize, like, no, this you know it's not that you're an idiot. You didn't see certain things coming, but it was because it was the first time I'd run that program that way. It doesn't make me
Right.
a bad person. My intentions were pure, but it did I let clients down? Absolutely. Did I let my team down because things got too messed up with me taking my finger off the pulse? Absolutely. Things became a mess. But that was one of the lessons, is if you're going to try and add value and change people's lives. And one of the lessons, I'll say lesson number one
Mm-hmm.
was that I learned that when you are starting a new offer or trying to do something new, you always have that imposter syndrome feeling because you're literally doing something for the very first time. So you feel uncomfortable and you don't know all the answers. You don't know how it's going to play out. What I learned is that if you overpromise on your offer, number one, people have a hard time buying it because it's not that they don't believe that it's possible. But what they believe is it's not possible for them because people don't typically like themselves very much and they don't think they're capable of really achieving their full potential. And, and what I mean by that is, let's say that you make your offer, hey, if you buy my program, it'll achieve every dream that you've ever had. You'll have financial freedom. You'll have more time with your family and friends. And if you make your promise too big, then people are going to hold you accountable, especially if you have a $30,000 coaching program. They're going to hold you accountable to results because you promised the moon. And
Right.
I actually learned the lesson I learned was it's actually the reverse that can make you feel like Nostradamus to your clients, where if you can lower the offer on the promise side and just say, hey, my thing is going to help you put a few extra $1,000 in the bank each month. And if you can also lower the bar of the prospects and the clients that you're speaking to, then you're so far ahead of them that, for example, if I spoke to somebody that had trouble turning on their computer, and then I
Hmm.
showed them how to use Microsoft Word and Excel and whatever. Like, you're literally like a wizard to those people
Right.
because their barrier to entry, or the stage that they're at, I guess that's a better way. The stage that they're at, you're 100 levels ahead of them. And that was like this adjustment of lowering the promise on my offer while lowering the stage that my clients were at. And I all of a sudden found myself around August, September, October as Nostradamus. Like, I had all the answers because I was just so much further ahead than my ideal clients.
That's a great point. And I think I've certainly experienced that, in the book world where you and I do what we do all day, it's all we do. We're saturated in it. So to
Mm-hmm.
us, I think we overestimate the amount of value that we have to provide in order to be helpful. And in doing so, we can end up creating these massive programs that actually scare people, as opposed
100%.
to like my philosophy is move the needle one notch every single day. And so if someone's going to invest $10,000, there are a couple different theories and none of them is wrong. But one theory is invest the full 10,000 up front. That's scary to a lot of people. But there are people, those same people would still invest that 10,000 if it were piecemeal while they're building trust with you. So say the first piece of that is $500 and they do that and they see the results. Now they're willing to invest another $500. And so it feels it's not only more palatable financially, but it's more palatable mentally because they don't have to question, oh my God, can I do this? And if I can't, what does that say about me?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really bad analogy, or maybe it's a great analogy. I don't know, but it's like you want to drive across the country. You have to figure out where's your end destination, where are you starting from, and literally all you have to do at first is get in the car and turn the key on. And so if you can understand the first step, then you can ask the question, well, what's the next step? Well, then you got to start driving. And then, it's like people
Yes.
people can only take one step at a time. And so if your offer and if your programs or your coaching or your systems are trying to help them do 50 steps at once, they're going to get overwhelmed. They're not going to get the value. And that was, I think, I'm so grateful for this year, to be honest, because I have a much deeper understanding of myself and my clients, and there's so
Mhm.
many wonderful things. There's way more than 3 lessons that came out of this year.
Oh, agreed. We could be here for
But
24. We could do a 24-hour-a-thon or something,
yeah,
but nobody
exactly.
wants to listen to
But
that.
it's
Yeah,
but it's that was one lesson is you don't have to overpromise the world. When you make a mistake, admit it. I mean, it was a painful
sure.
mistake I made. I had to talk with my clients and say, hey, this isn't going the way I'd envisioned, and we need to make some adjustments. And we had to do some refunds at that time. It's like nobody likes that stuff. But I guess that's the other, maybe one of the lessons I've learned is that it's very difficult to over communicate with those people that you care about the most. If it's your family,
Mm,
or if it's your clients, or if it's your friends, it's very difficult to stay in touch too much, because the gap, what you want to do is you want to retreat. You want to dig a hole and then start throwing the dirt on top of yourself when things are really not going well.
sure.
and
Sure.
and so your natural instinct is to retreat, but the actual solutions behind running towards that obstacle, or that monster, or that adversity that you're trying to retreat from, the answer is actually
Hmm.
behind it. So you've got
Yeah.
to turn around and face the damn thing and have the tough
Yeah.
conversations. And and then all of us, it's, I think we've all experienced that, right? Like a conversation we're trying to avoid with a family member or a friend or something like that, and then you have that conversation, and immediately after, you have this like weight lifted off your shoulders.
Yes. Yes.
Like, that's every single obstacle. You got to really, I think what I've learned to do this year is separate myself and really listen to my emotions and my energy, and really monitor, like, when things are not going well and I feel maybe angry or sad or depressed or whatever, is really to
Hmm.
step back and question, like, why do I feel that way? Because all your negative emotions are telling you is that things aren't going your way, or the way that you
Right.
had envisioned. And all your positive emotions are telling you that you're making progress towards a valued goal. So it's like, if you can kind of watch your emotions as you go through the journey, you're going to have a lot more success a lot faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the analogy about driving the car across country and needing to know where you're going leads beautifully into one of my lessons, which is you have to know where you're going and you have to know how you're going to get there. Now, you and I have known each other long enough for you to definitely remember the days when it was like, "What, Elizabeth, what do you do?" And the answer was, "What day is it? If it's Tuesday, I'm a jewelry designer. If it's Thursday, I'm a coach. If it's Friday, I'm a writer." It was insane. And beyond that, if you asked me, "What's your goal? Where are you trying to get with each one of these ventures?" My answer was like, just to the end of the day. Like, I'm just trying to survive today. I don't even know what this looks like in a month or a year or 5 years. And the thought of it scared and overwhelmed the daylights out of me. So I've never been, until this year, until 2020, well, maybe the end of 2019, what you would call a typical planner.
Mm.
Because the overwhelm of the how has always been like, oh God, I've always had a loose plan, but I've never had a strategic plan until, and this is the beauty of what I get to do, I met Frank Lopes, who wrote the 7-minute setup, which he's a client of mine, but we wrote, whatever, wrote the 7-minute setup. And it's Frank's unique process for how he's gotten himself out of bankruptcy twice. He's been using it for years and years and years. And when he first put it, and I won't go into detail on it. It's actually episode 44 of this podcast is with Frank, but it's a very clear and concise way of setting up your next 7 years, 7 months, it's all based on seven, which of
Mm.
course has divine meaning through the ages. But I have tried my fair share of planners and organizers and schedules, and they're all great for somebody. They all work for somebody. But for whatever reason, none of them clicked long term with me. And the thing about Frank's process that clicked immediately is that it can evolve. So if I set a plan on whatever day and I say in 3 months, I want to go to Italy, I'm making this up because I won't be going to Italy in 3 months right now.
They won't
And
even they
I
won't even take us filthy Americans.
Exactly. Like, we're not even allowed. We're not even permitted. But if I were to say that, um, let's say in 10 weeks from now, I recognize, you know what? I have grown enough that in whatever way, that I've realized Italy isn't actually where I want to go. I want to go to the south of France. I can change it, and that's okay. Whereas with many other processes out there, like, if you don't hit the goal, you got to hit the goal. Then you can change it up.
I was just going to say, I think you touched on a couple things that were just so, like, number one is it's frustrating not to know what you want. Like, it's the most frustrating question in the world when people are like, what do you want? And you can't answer it. But the answer is actually paved through the road of just trying a whole bunch of stuff blindly, having the courage to kind of be the fool that's trying a whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch of stuff. It's like, I always use the ice cream store analogy, which is like, if you never tried ice cream and you walk into a store with 31 flavors, you literally
Sure.
have to try every one to see, do I
What you
like
like.
this? Yeah, what do you like? What gives you energy? And that's why you do need to monitor your energy, because in the beginning you're going to take a bunch of blind action to discover what you like, which is going to lead you to the place where you're able to articulate what you want, which kind of taps into what you just said, which is the playing field in this game of life is dynamic. Is that if
Mm-hmm.
I always kind of envision like an obstacle course with orange cones, right? But the majority of orange cones are behind a brick wall. You can't see them and they're moving. So as you're
I remember when you first told me this analogy like 4 years ago, and it blew my mind because it was so accurate.
Yeah, and you're going towards the one cone you can see, but the rest of them are moving behind the brick wall. So you're once you can peek around the brick wall, you can see the second one. But if you're
Yes.
trying to tackle all the cones at once, it's very difficult because they're moving targets based on your actions. You're
Correct.
learning different lessons. You're changing your mind on what's important to you as you go through this journey. And I think it reminds me, and this is where I've kind of arrived today, which is I was always doing things that were in the immediate. Like, I need money today. I need this to happen today. And because
Mm-hmm.
my focus was always on the things that were expedient, the things that were the fastest, I never transitioned my thinking towards the things that were truly meaningful, and built a solid enough foundation to where I could handle the dynamic changes that come at you. And
Right.
what I mean by that now today, I'm very, very clear. I know that my mission is to help entrepreneurs and small business owners avoid and eliminate unnecessary suffering and expense. Because as you know from my story, it's like I went 8.5 years and spent 200 grand,
Yeah.
and kind of woke up and I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm buying all these courses
Right.
and I don't have a working business almost a decade in. And
Yes.
and so I'm just trying to help the people avoid the mistakes that I've already made for them. And what that allows me to do, it allows my day to day to make choices that are based on the things that are actually meaningful, the things that are long term. And the expedient stuff, it doesn't disappear, but it allows me to keep moving forward when things don't go your way on a certain day.
And I love that because it's almost like we planned this. How well what you're saying is leading into my three lessons. Because my second one is to really understand your passion, but keep exploring it. So it's often said in the entrepreneur community, you've got to know what's your thing,
Mm,
right? Like what's your why? That's super important, no doubt. But I think that I got into a place where I started judging myself poorly
mm,
because I wasn't 100% sure
mm,
what my thing was. And even though I told my friend Aaron one day, I feel like I'm in the right universe, but I'm not yet on the right planet.
mm,
The universe being storytelling and powerful vulnerability, whether it's through books or posts or whatever. But I couldn't quite put my finger on the thing that really gets you up in the morning. People say, find the thing that makes you jump out of bed in the morning. And I finally accepted, Mike, in 2020, that there's not a lot that's going to make me jump out of bed, except if the house is on fire. Like, I am not a morning person. And that's fine. So it came down to what gets me super excited around 10:30 a.m.
mm,
and keeps me excited until 10:30, 11 o'clock p.m. And for me, it's story for sure, but it's also discovering hidden voices. And this is why for so many, now it's fun to tie it all together.
mm,
Now I recognize why I loved America's Got Talent and X Factor. And it was because someone would come on that stage who did not look like an opera singer, stereotypically, would open their mouth, and what came out, every hair on my body would stand on end, right? And I would think, how has no one discovered this person yet? How is this possible that this person has not been nabbed up by a major record producer or whatever? And that's how I feel about story. So it's simple to go to the New York Times bestseller list and say, okay, what's number one? Or what's in the top 10? But I love finding the book that, in my opinion, needs to be there, but nobody knows about it yet.
Yeah, it's very similar to my line of work. I find that people have enormous talents. They've already faced and overcome tremendous adversity because this life is filled with it, and the whole meaningful expedient thing, by the way, I want to give full credit to Jordan Peterson and his book 12 Rules for Life, because that was chapter 7 basically. But it's I find that people have kind of lost their way. It's almost like as you're born, you're this perfect creature, but then you get into school and they tell you to shut up and sit down and stand in line and follow the rules. And next thing you know, you kind of lose your way. When you're really little, you're just being creative and being a kid, and you're sticking peanut butter in the VCR and whatever. And for the younger folks that don't know what a VCR is, go, fuck off.
Right.
But
yeah, screw you. Right.
But it's like you're trying stuff, and you're not beating yourself up when you make mistakes as a kid, but over time we get conditioned that you have to act in a certain way and you have to do certain things, and you lose that sense of yourself. And what I find is that people have enormous talents. They've overcome tremendous obstacles. They're like everybody I meet, I think they have an amazing story. There's always something to tap into. And I'm fascinated with the whole process and the psychological process of helping somebody recognize that in themselves.
Sing it.
And so that's why, I love all these. I mean, gosh, I don't even want to say this publicly, but I love like extreme home makeover type of shows, and then Queer Eye and stuff like that. Is like, because they're finding somebody who has. And here's the thing: we all have a story, we all have talents, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, but a lot of us along the journey, and I know this because that's what happened to me. Um, we don't see it in ourselves, and we beat ourselves up and we talk negatively about ourselves. We don't see all the wonderful things that we have done. And before we met, I mean, literally the day that we met, I would say 12 months before that, I was almost a recluse. Like I'd spent 4 years not talking to anybody. In 2014 or 15, I was like, okay. Part of it was my brother-in-law's, took his own life, and it kind of woke me up, and I was like, I got one life. How long do you want to just be avoiding all this stuff? Just because in 2008, I went from liquid millionaire to $200,000 in debt with the loss of the mortgage company. How long do I want to beat myself up? When do I want to write the next chapter of my story and put myself back out there? And
to be clear, you did write the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'll do your shameless plug for you, but Made Over: How to Create a Powerful Brand That Will Transform Your Business and Save Your Life.
I mean, I do.
Like that?
I feel like this process has saved my life, because I was swimming through the sea rudderless, and it didn't matter how hard I rowed the boat. I was going in a circle because I didn't have a clear vision of where I was headed, and I'd lost my way, and I was not interacting with enough other people. And I said, you know what, this is crazy. I started doing like Facebook lives and putting myself out there. I got into a few Facebook groups. I was 8 years in at this point, with a ton of knowledge, a ton of book knowledge, book smarts behind me. But I just said, I'm just going to start helping people and see where it leads me. And some gal was like in a group and was just like, hey, does anybody know how this lead magnet thing works? And I was like, sure, I can.
Is that what it was? Was that what my question was?
It was something about the technology behind the lead magnet delivering. And I was like, I know how to answer that.
Okay.
It was like with Lead Pages or something. And I was like, I know how to answer that. Would you like some help? And we hop on a 15-minute call together, And next thing I know, 6 years later, like I consider you one of my best friends. And you never
Yeah.
know, you never know. I think that's one point. I know you have this theme of threes, and I don't even know how many lessons we've already gone over, but you never know where the chips are going to fall if you get the foundation of your thinking right and take it off of yourself. Because I was always like, well, I need money, I need sales, I need leads. And when I shifted the focus, and this has happened several times in my career, when you shift the focus and you make it, who can I help today? And that's
Yep.
what gets me out of bed, because I feel like there's somebody out there today that's where I was in 2014. They are miserable. They've spent a lot of money. They've got significant talents and skills and a story. They even have something that people like to buy, but they're struggling to figure it out, and it's creating
Yep.
anxiety and worry and depression and even even suicide. And when my brother-in-law took his own life, I was like, this is what's going to happen if not only do I not fix the issue for myself, that's where it's going to lead me eventually. I'm going to drive myself insane. But there are people like that every single day, and that's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
And I will say, even though I don't like to get out of bed in the morning, that is truly, and I say this to my clients too, think, when they're thinking about their book and how do I reach 1 million people, it's how can I help one person today? How can I impact one person today? And that's not always through the sale of a book. Sometimes that's just posting something on a social media platform or calling someone or texting someone and saying, thinking about you, you're doing a good job. And whatever it is, to just be beneficial. And you never know where those things will take you or who they'll put you in connection with. And you have to be okay with not knowing. You just have to. And listen, you're talking to the queen of tell me it all. I want to know everything until the world ends. I want to know everything that's going to happen. But I honor and deeply believe in the value of surrendering to that not knowing and just continuing to work for the good of whomever it is you're able to uh, help on
Yeah,
any given
and I
day.
think it's like we know so little, we just don't admit it to ourselves because it gives us tremendous anxiety. But we
Sure.
know 0.00001% of what's actually going on with the world, in the universe.
Right.
Really don't understand very much, and it would be too. Imagine if we processed everything going on in the environment, like when you're sitting in a chair. I know that our mutual friend Clay went through this at the event. Was when you're sitting in a chair and somebody says, how does your butt feel on the seat? You're not thinking about that until somebody says it. It's like you
Correct.
don't think about all these things coming at you. And and so you really, it's just this little mental reframes and these mindset shifts that make all the difference on whether your business is going to work, whether your life's going to work, um, and the meaning that you give certain things. And it really does,
Mm.
it does come to allowing certain things to happen that are out of your control. It comes to giving them meaning. When things don't go your way, you get to choose the meaning of what that is. It's is it the worst thing ever, or did that just build strength and character and knowledge that I'll never forget the rest of my life? Which one is it? You get to choose.
Yeah. And there's never been a better year for that. I mean, truly, in my lifetime. In my lifetime. I mean, I've learned to value the difference between pivot, which is a word I hope not to hear again after December 31st, along with unprecedented and bandwidth, but pivot versus growth. So there's a difference between pivoting and evolving. I used to really get on myself about pivoting too much. And I think that again, there are people who hate the word hustle and there are people who love the word hustle. And I'm not here. I'm someone who doesn't like the word hustle, but it's because of the energy that I assign to the word. If there are people who love the word hustle because they assign a positive energy or it motivates them, that's great. I'm not here to tell anybody what words are good or bad or indifferent. Pivot started as a great word for me, of course, because of friends and the scene that no one can get now out of their head. But I thought, okay, if you're pivoting, it means you're being strategic.
Hmm.
It then took a different turn where I thought pivoting means you don't know what the hell you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you're literally pivoting from looking north to looking south, but that's metaphorically. I've now gotten to the point where I can see pivoting not as unintentional and aimless shifting, just okay, something's not working, just give me something else. Anything else, just give me something, right? But to an evolution of this isn't working now because, and therefore I'm going to switch to this. And it's not so much a switch as it is like a gentle turn. And if it is a switch, if you have to get rid of an employee or let an employee go, let's say that more kindly, or switch your business model entirely, which I've done some tweaking of the way that I do things in 2020. And some of it was a result of 2020, and some of it was a result of me having more time with myself to say, is this really how I want to do this? Is this really giving me joy? Am I really making an impact in the way that I want to? Because if you're just making an impact but you're miserable, well, that's not sustainable.
Yeah, man, I think the best question in the world that kids ask all the time is a one word question, which is why. And it's like
Yeah.
I think people say all these fluffy things, and it's great, it's fine. It's you do need a why. Why am I doing this? But like I believe that people need 1,000 whys. You know, why am I doing this,
Mm,
and what's going to help me not quit? Well, I have a reason attached to my kids and them modeling my behavior, and I wanted to, in my mind, if I quit on the entrepreneurial dream, it shows my kids what it looks like to settle and to give up. And so
mhm, mhm.
that thought and that why kept me going through the really dark times. Then there's an underlying why that I have with my clients, which is I'm going to help them eliminate unnecessary suffering and expense as they go through this journey, so they don't have to spend a decade. Um, and then there's whys like, well, I want to create a lead magnet. Well, why are you doing that? And I
Right.
think the way that I envision your talk about pivots is there's one pivot to say that I'm going to dig a well until I strike water. Like that's my underlying thing. I'm going to dig a well till I strike water. Well, there's the person that's digging down because you know that water's down, and they run into a rock and they pivot and they start a new well. And that's
Yes.
and next thing you know, you got 1,000 1-foot wells.
And that was me,
And
for the
and
record,
me
for a long
yeah, and
time.
me too, you know, and it's okay. That's part of the process of figuring out which well's the right well. But once you figure out that right well for you, then when you hit a rock, it's like you're still going down. I'm going down. I just need to figure out how to get around. So
100%.
it's a I think the way that I would describe it is it's a once you discover the underlying kind of mission and purpose in your brain, it's a continual process to get more and more narrow and dig deeper and deeper at the one thing. And I have this thing, I call it the four clarity pillars. But if you understand yourself at a very deep level, you understand your ideal client at a very deep level, you understand how you solve their problems through your products and services, and that's a game in itself, because you got to build systems and team, and you got to really create an experience that people want to pay for. And then the fourth pillar is you have to understand how human beings work. And why do we buy anything anyway?
Right.
How do we tick, and why do we do the things we do? And once I discovered like the mission and the purpose, I've just kept narrowing and going deeper into those four things. And I've arrived today in a place that if you saw my stuff behind the scenes, you'd think I was a little bit nutty of how deep I've gone, not only with understanding myself, but understanding my ideal clients. And I can reverse engineer my copy very, very well at this point because I understand them so deeply. And
Exactly.
that none of that would have happened if I wouldn't have made the mistakes with the coaching program in 2019. If I wouldn't have run into a place where 2020 began to roll downhill, then a very bad hill it felt like for a while. And
Right.
and none of that would have happened because I woke up around this summer and I was like, isn't it time to begin really like taking this thing to the next level, helping more people. And to do that, I needed more clarity. But the conduit to give me the clarity was a whole bunch of pain and things that didn't go my way. And so is that a blessing or a curse? I think that's the frame that we all need to decide for ourselves. Is
Well, it's all in your
it's all
perspective, right?
perspective. And for me is a blessing. Like, however, there were two moments. One was in December and one was near the end of the summer that it felt the exact opposite of a blessing. Like what I was feeling felt like the most pain and misery going on between my ears because I hadn't cracked the code yet of how to rebuild this thing better and stronger and faster. Um, and you and I know like this month has been a wonderful month for me, and the previous several months have been great because I think we talked about that imposter syndrome. Like I've Carl Jung says you got to incorporate your shadow, right? It's like that's kind of what happened is I finally matched the vision and here's where I want to get that thinking versus who I am today and what I do today. Like those two things are in total congruence with me right now. And
Yes.
and I also have the wisdom to know I'll probably lose that congruence again at some point and I'm going
I was I was just gonna say that. So that was a huge lesson for me, and I learned it years ago, but it was when day 214 happened, which was the day that I discovered I had $2.14 in my checking account.
to
And so now we just refer to any bad day as day 214. But I said this at the time, and I've said it since, I'm saying it now. I Even though I fixed that problem in what felt like record time, and a lot of it actually was thanks to you, because remember, I called you. You were the first person I called when that happened.
Yeah, I gave you
And I
a
said,
quick
dude,
reframe. I was like, "Oh,
oh,
you have a positive bank account. You should be happy." Like,
it was incredible. I was sitting on my steps and I called you. I said, dude, we have a real problem. And you were like, what's wrong? Something was really wrong. We have a real problem. My bank account is at $2.14. And you said, okay. And I said, "Did you hear me? The bank account is at $2.14." And you said, "Is this the first time this has ever happened to you?" I was like, "Wait a minute. Is this normal?" And by no means would I suggest that this is a rite of passage or something that has to happen to every entrepreneur or whatever. But I was like, what? And then you said, you're positive. Like, you want me to show you a screenshot right now of my bank account? So you said to me, and I will always give you full credit for this. You said, look, take a couple hours and be sad and pissed and frustrated and all the things, and then get the fuck back to work.
Mhm.
And I did. And while it doesn't always work out this way, by the end of that week, I think I had generated I think it was $29,000 in contracts. It wasn't money in the bank,
Yep.
but it was contracts. Now, does it always work that way? Of course not. It just so happened. But I said then, and I'm saying again now, day 214 could happen tomorrow. It could happen again and again and again. You losing your congruency could happen again and again and again. And that's not, in my opinion, the miracle. The miracle isn't coming out of it. The miracle is knowing that it could happen again, but that you can come out of it by using the same strategies, the same perseverance, the same approach that you used the first time. So it's not like, oh God, I failed again. It's, here we are again, and I'm going to get myself out of this even more quickly because I have evolved. But I'm not going to pivot and go dig a well over there yonder, because I think that's where the solution is.
And I would say that my current thinking is not only may it happen again, it's guaranteed to happen again. It's
Yes.
guaranteed that I
Yes.
will find and this is kind of my and again, I want to respect everybody's time, but it's like what happened was I arrived in a place where I had so much pain and so much internal dialogue, and I'd put in all the effort. I'd built all the skills and the character that I felt like I needed to actually have, not only a business that I was proud of, but to make it through a very challenging beginning of the year. And I was so frustrated, but that pain led me to a place where I began to dig into what's actually going on. So I went down a very deep rabbit hole, started really, really understanding psychology, human behavior, what's neuroscience, what's going on in our brain. And I dug into a lot of that stuff before, but this time I was committed. And so, and these are the things that I think about, and the stories I tell myself is like, I've done what most people would not do. I guarantee you 99.9% of people would have quit if I tell you my entire 15-year journey. There are
Right.
people that be like, there's no
So
way.
can we be honest? Can we be honest? If you had known at the beginning of your 15-year journey the way that it was going to all go, you and I have said before, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't know if I would have taken it on.
If you had told me the place I was going to arrive mentally and physically, like I might have taken it. Still,
Agreed.
however, if you take that piece out of the equation, I would have just gotten a job at a
100%.
car
That's
wash or
correct.
something,
No, all day. So if you know, and that's why I say that I'm the girl who loves to know, okay, how does this end? In other words, and I'm just being honest, is it worth it?
Mm.
And I wasn't, there have been times when the lessons didn't matter. Yes, they matter in hindsight. They're extremely valuable. And I see the point of all of it. At the time, if you had said to me, okay, Elizabeth, as a single mom of, 5, you're going to have a bank account that has $2.14 in it. You're going to, the list goes on and on and
Mhm.
on. I don't know that I don't know that I'm a masochist. I don't know that I wouldn't have just said, you know what? I really like being in Starbucks. So that barista position doesn't sound that bad. Some days it still sounds kind of fun, So I think that's the story.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how it's going to end. You're going to die. Like we're all going to die. And so at the end of it, so how's this going to end? What I mean, I think this is the thing. This is the lesson I learned at the middle of this year was what gives us the most anxiety? Well, we have tremendous anxiety that we're not in control of this fucking spaceship that we're on. We have anxiety that we're going to die. We have anxiety and worry that we're going to get judged socially, which is biologically hardwired into us, because if we're judged socially, that means we might not be able to reproduce. And so it's like, okay, well, let's reframe that. Are you going to die? Yes. Are you going to make mistakes as you move towards something that you find meaningful? Yes. Are you going to be judged? Yes. Okay. Well, if the answer is yes to those, let's stop worrying about it and let's get to work. And
And just get to work. And that's what I often do. That's one of my own practices is when I start worrying about something, I say, what's the worst case scenario? I determine whether or not I can handle that. And in every case so far, I've been able to. And that allows me actually just looking it in the face and saying, well, if I can't pay the mortgage or whatever. I mean, it I look at it, it's not as scary when you think, here's how I'll handle it.
yeah, and I think it's helpful like now. You just always try and you've got to like reframe your brain, but the easiest way to reframe things is to look at the inverse. There's always somebody that,
Yes.
like, if you are passionate about, and I'm going to use a bad example for 2020 considering how it's gone down, but if you're passionately for Donald Trump or Joe Biden or either way, there's always
Why'd you have to say that on my
I'm just
podcast?
saying that there's somebody with the exact opposite opinion that is as
Yes.
passionate about a subject matter,
Yes.
and that's hard for us to process. If
Yes.
if if you love chocolate and somebody else hates chocolate, you can't even fathom. You're like, what do
It's
you
like, what the
mean?
hell is wrong with you?
What do you
Right.
mean you don't like coffee? Like whatever it is. And
Right.
but looking at the inverse of the situation gives you some perspective, and
Yes.
maybe you can realize that you're not the only human being on this planet, and maybe at some point you can get out of your own head and shift your focus on helping
Yes.
especially if you run a business. Shift your focus to them and not you, and you'll get, I mean, I think it was Jim Rohn that said that, help enough people and you get everything you want in return, or whatever he said. I butchered that quote for sure, but i would just say, I would just say, like, that is the formula. When I like the turnaround at this year was I made all of my efforts around, is this the right thing for my client? Is this the right, how do I show up every day? Well, if my point is to end suffering and expense for entrepreneurs and small business owners, what are all the ways I could do that? Well, I could run a podcast. I could write a book. I could show up in a free group. I could do, like, I just started creating ideas that had nothing to do with me getting sales. It was, how do I help them? And the sales and the clarity and the offers, they all emerged from just helping other people. And
Right.
I really went after it just recently, just really went after that full steam ahead. And I think I still to this day do things other people wouldn't. It's been 120 days that I've been going to bed and waking up at the exact same time. I listen to, I have a morning routine where I listen to certain things that are expanding my mind in the morning. And then in the evening before I go to bed, I put on headphones and I'm literally washing myself. But it's in certain verticals that I know that for me to truly help more people, I need to grow in certain areas. And so my
Right.
morning routine and my evening routine is dedicated towards, I'm still probably, I think I'm consuming psychological or neuroscience lectures at probably 2.5 hours a day. And people would say, well, you don't have time for that. You don't have time to run the business and help other people and do this stuff. But I just say I don't have time not to do that because I'm
Right.
committed to the end goal. If I really want to help other people, I have to understand this stuff at such a level that I can help them get in the car and turn on the key,
And turn on the
and just start the damn car. And then I can help them get on the right street. And then I can help them get out of town. And then next thing you know, you're in New Orleans.
What is the best place for people to find you these days, sir? Because we're not going to give out we are going to give out your Facebook, but we're going to give out more than that for reasons that were explained about 20 minutes ago.
I would say themakeovermaster.com is my website. I'm on most of the social media channels. And I would just say if you're running a business and you want some help, on the Pick My Brain page, we have a free course. We've got free resources. We do a little 5 minutes of mentoring for people that are struggling to figure out the next move. And so I'm just glad and grateful to still be here. Honestly, like after some of the adversity, looking back and some of the stories I have to tell, um, I kind of shake my head sometimes at night and like, I can't believe I kept going, and I would just say it's always worth it. It's always, if you run a business and you can help people with your craft or your thing, you never know where those connections, I'm going to tap into one more thing. Well, before we end,
Okay.
you never know where these things are going to lead you. When I was struggling with, it's about the same time I met you, I met our friend Mike TG, because I
Yep.
was interacting in groups, right? It's weird if you actually interact with other humans, which is where all business and all money comes from. Things start to happen, and so I was struggling in one specific area on my business at the time, and he said, I think really what you need to learn now is you need to become a better copywriter because your copy sucks. Well, about 6 months before that, um, this guy named Mitch Miller had given Mike TG his copywriting course. And he said, look, I think you're a good guy. It's a $2,000 course, but let me just give it to you. And who knows why he decided to do that on that day. Well,
Right.
TG says, I think you need to follow this guy. And I have his course. Would you like to log into it? And I was like, sure. Well, next thing I know, I'm in Mitch's world and I'm studying copy from him. I I was like, man, this guy really is speaking my language and whatever. And then he does a Facebook Live video one morning. He lives in Thailand. And at the end of the video, he said, I'm surprised when people are stuck in certain areas, they don't just ask for help more. And so I
Hmm.
reached out to him. I said, I could use your help on copy because I'm having trouble figuring out my offer at that point. He says, oh, if you get over here to my conference, I'll help you. And I'm thinking like, there's no way I need another course. I don't need another conference, but he said something in a tone of voice or something where I just felt like this guy really means it. If I come over there, he'll help me. So before I know it, I'm 9,000 miles from my house 2 weeks later, by the way. And this comes down to doing things that most people would think you're crazy. It's like I find myself at his house, and that guy literally changed my life. So if he hadn't given the course to Mike TG, and Mike TG hadn't tried to help me, and then I hadn't said
Yeah.
yes to an opportunity, you never. And then I got a message on Saturday from one of my clients, and she's like, I want to say thank you. I'm crying. It's Saturday morning and you've changed my life. Well, how the hell was any of that ever going to happen without taking some blind action in the beginning? And so you
Right.
just
Exactly.
never know. It's like the whole thing's a big video game of Benjamin Button. You
Right.
never know where the thing's going to lead you. You just have to take blind
Yeah.
action with the right attitude, the right mojo, and try and help some people.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you, my friend. I'm so glad we finally did this, and that you pushed through all those years, of course. And
I'm still
I
here.
appreciate you. I appreciate you and all your wisdom and hilarity.
Dude, I'm honored, and thank you for having me on. And I know this isn't the end for us, so it's going to be fun.
Nope. Not yet. Not today, Satan. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, this is your friendly reminder to like, subscribe, and share so we can keep getting the word out, pun intended. And if you're looking for a fun, productive workshop to get your book written, I invite you to check out my newest free on-demand book writing workshop, as well as a slew of other book writing and publishing resources over on my website, publishaprofitablebook.com. Again, thanks so much for joining in, and I'll talk to you again soon.